another shutdown. We're going to be able to do quite a bit of filming during this time to help you get the most out of your home training routines and to help improve your practice for when you come back. Today I want to talk about instant strength stretching. So I've talked a lot about the instant strength principles that will help you get the most in terms of safety and performance out of your body when you're lifting to help you meet your objectives. Those same actions that are used in strength can also be used in mobility. The neuromuscular system works very similarly under load, whether that load is to create force or create range of motion. So I wanted to go over, once again, the instant strength principles, talk about what their role is when we're strength training, and talk about what their role is during mobility training. To start off with, shaking it out, doing fast and loose drills, getting everything relaxed. In strength training, we use those shaky motions to keep the muscles relaxed between efforts and to allow our body to quickly alternate between contraction and relaxation. That rate of alternation between contraction and relaxation is really what makes athletic movement. In mobility training, we can use the same type of thing to facilitate deeper relaxation during a stretch. I'm going to use the 90-90 hip as an example. This is part of our easy strength warm-up. I've got my legs at 90 degrees here. I might lean into the stretch. I'm feeling a little bit restricted on this hip, so I can just kind of loosen up a little bit, do some small bouncy motions. To work temporarily past those restrictions that I was initially feeling. And shake those muscles loose and get a little bit deeper into the stretch. When you're doing these bouncy motions, make them small, make them subtle. It's not a great big ballistic movement where you're significantly exceeding your range of motion and then bouncing back. There is some risk associated with that in less healthy muscle and connective tissues, so it's definitely something that you want to go into gently. Whereas these small range of motion, little flutters, can help you get a little bit more out of your stretch. A big ballistic bounce is something that you have to use with caution. We'll talk about that later. Visualization is the next action, the next instant strength principle. In strength training, the role of visualization is to rehearse the lift. Mentally go through the exercise before you begin it. Know where your focus needs to be, what the timing of the lift is, what your start position and finish position are during the lift, and just bring your awareness to center on the action of lifting. Visualization in mobility training can help us direct the stretch. So once again, I'm going to use the 90-90 as an example. I'm going to visualize as I hinge forward, not just bringing my chest towards my knee, but bringing my knee towards my chest. And without actually getting into an uncomfortable stretch, simply that act of visualization helps me deepen my range of motion even further. So you can think about, or rehearse the stretch a little bit. Where am I going to go during this stretch? But also you can use visualization while you are in the stretch to increase your range of motion. The next instant strength principle is load, or getting loaded. When you're using loading in preparation for a lift, we'll use a deadlift for example, you're getting your body sort of wedged into the action so that there's no slack in the bar and everything's ready to go. What I've done is now, instead of making this deadlift just about lifting with my legs, or worse, lifting just up and putting a bunch of shear force on my spine, now I've made that deadlift into a full body movement by already starting to get into the bar a little bit. So I've spread the load across multiple muscle groups. In mobility training, getting loaded can help you stretch the line of tension. So we might talk about the straddle stretch here. It's going to be a little indecent. The straddle stretch, a great place to use this idea of stretching the line, creating a stretch that goes across multiple muscle groups. So straddle stretch, adductor stretch, right? Maybe a little hamstringy. If you pull the toes back, maybe a little calfy. But we can bring more muscles into play with a reach, with the idea of dorsiflexing the feet, pulling the toes back, with the idea of pressing the knees down into the floor. Now we're starting to get a line in the body to be stretched out, a muscle pathway rather than simply a muscle or muscle group. The next instant strength principle is grip. When we talk about gripping in strength training, we're doing so to get more muscles firing. Okay? The harder I squeeze, the more motor units get recruited to the effort. I can squeeze with my hands, I can squeeze with my feet. The more I squeeze, the more motor units are going to help me in that movement, the deeper my training effect is going to be. In strength training and mobility training, muscular contraction only has one action, and that is to pull. So muscles are always pulling. Even when they're lengthening, under tension, they're resisting that lengthening by trying to pull, trying to shorten. We get more pull when we grip during strength training. We get more pull into a stretch when we're training for mobility. I'll use a forward fold as an example this time. This is normally a fairly restricted movement for me because I'm quite tight along the posterior chain. So I'm going to use some of the other things we've talked about first. Relaxing, just kind of doing some short, bouncy or rocky movements. Visualizing and directing the stretch along the back of the body. Loading, I'm going to try to get more muscles involved, the muscular system. So I want the back side of the body to be experiencing this stretch. That means everything from the toe, under the arch of the foot, up the back of the leg, up the hamstring, around the glutes and up to my eyebrows. That's the line of tension I want to stretch. So I'm going to pull my toes back a little bit, and I'm going to drop my head to get that line as long as possible. Now, I'm going to grip. I'm going to grip with my hands. I'm going to spread my toes. And that's going to help me get further and further into that range of motion, using strength, essentially, to stretch. Now, we haven't even really gotten the most out of any of these techniques until we incorporate the breath. In strength training, we use the breath to increase stability, whether preparing for a movement, as in the case of the inhalation, or performing a movement, as in the case of the power breath out. We can use the same principles to increase the pull if we're doing an active stretch using tension, or we can use the exhalation to deepen the stretch if we're trying to just get a little bit more relaxed. So we've got two different options here. Once again, I'll use the forward fold. So I'm just going to shake it out a little bit. I'm going to visualize the whole back side of the body being involved. I'm going to deepen the stretch by getting the back side of the body involved in that. I'm going to use some tension, and I'm going to use a power breath now. By using the power breath, I can now, with each exhalation, get further and further into the stretch. Now that's using strength to stretch. If I want to stick with a relaxation effect, say I'm trying to chill out at the end of the day, I'm done with my workout, kids are in bed, I just need to relax a little bit. I don't have to go through all of those high tension strategies. I can keep it light. I can just use a little bit of bouncy movement to facilitate relaxation, and I can use a specific type of breath to deepen that relaxation as well. I'm just going to remove my mask for a second here so you can see what's going on. So I'll get sort of into position here, get into the stretch a little bit, a little bouncy movement, a little pulling back and forth on the toes to get that nervous system stretched out. I'm going to take a deep breath in through my nose, and as I exhale, I'm going to exhale like I'm fogging up a mirror. And with each exhalation, I'm able to get a little bit more range of motion. These are all tricks to increase one aspect of mobility, one that we have a lot of control over. That's muscle length. When it comes to mobility, we're talking about a few different factors. One that we do have control over is muscle length. One that we don't have control over is joint mobility. So there are structural stops in our joints where bones run into bones and there's just no more stretch available. Joint mobility is a lot harder to come by. It might be a bony structural stop. It might be a connective tissue structural stop. Where the ligaments are just at their maximum stretch and there's nothing left to give. That might be malleable over time, but it's going to take a long time. We mainly are interested in maintaining muscular health. Another aspect of mobility that we have control over is neural tension in the body. So all throughout the muscles of the body, we've got nerves running through sheaths inside of the belly of the muscle. We can use a technique called nerve flossing, which is sort of what we're doing when we're doing those little bouncy movements, but we can do it with strength as well by articulating a joint that is connected to the muscle that we're trying to stretch. So if I want to stretch the back side of my leg, it's my hamstrings, it's my calves. Well, I want to make sure my knee is fully extended so that both the hamstring and the gastroc are at maximum stretch at the knee joint. And then I might do some ankle articulation. And if I turn my ankle in and out, point and flex, circumduct, the length of the muscle is changing a little bit, but so too is the length of the nerve within that muscle. We're getting the nerve to move back and forth, and we're getting a dialogue going again between the nervous system and the muscular system. If you've been seated for a long time and you have stayed in that sort of shortened position in the hamstring with your legs bent and your feet on the floor and you're just sitting there typing and it's just terrible, your nervous system doesn't know its capability. It doesn't know the range of motion that it potentially has. We need to reintroduce that range of motion to not just the muscular system, but the nervous system as well. And that's where neural flossing can come in. Now, the last strength principle that I want to talk about is go, or compensatory acceleration. When we move with speed during strength training, we improve our rate of force development, we bring the muscles into play more quickly, and speed also brings more motor units into play. Just like gripping, just like getting loaded before a lift, moving with purpose, moving quickly helps get more motor units involved in the strength training exercise. Speed during mobility work is particularly applicable to a kind of stretching called ballistic stretching. Ballistic stretching, you will have seen in a lot of like the old-timey stuff, the Charles Atlas, Frank Zane, those guys were all pretty significantly into ballistic stretching. There's a reason to be cautious with ballistic stretching. The idea is that you use speed to exceed the muscle's limit. What you might end up doing is running into the joint limitation if you overuse or overdo it on a ballistic stretch. If you have a healthy, strong muscular system and a high level of body awareness, ballistic stretching might be something that can help you get further into your mobility practice. For the majority of people, keeping the movements small and bouncy, but without going too hard, our fast and loose drills applied to stretches are going to do the trick. So, fast and loose, visualization, our focus, getting loaded, getting more muscles involved, using grip, using breath, and using speed all have a role in both muscle involvement during strength training and muscle involvement during mobility training. These principles are universally applicable. I hope this has shed some light on your mobility work that's part of your warm-up, and we can get more range of motion to be safer during our lifts. Thanks very much.